What's up, guys? I'm very excited to share this knife with you today. This is a new knife and new brand to my channel. Of course, the Hinderer brand, which is something of kind of myth and legend in the knife community. You know, I've seen lots of Hinderer knives on YouTube and pictures and Facebook and things like that, and this is the first time I've received one for sharpening and service, and also the first time I've handled one, personally. These Hinderer knives are not so common, and you can't just buy them anywhere, so to actually see one in person is a pretty neat experience. So I just want to give a little bit of background about the Hinderer brand in general. So Rick Hinderer, I believe the story goes, was a farrier or a horseshoe maker, and I don't know, one day he decided to make a knife for himself or a friend, and word kind of spread and got out that he was pretty good at making knives, and one thing led to another, and developed a knife company, and I think he's been making knives for something like 25 or 30 years, but his production knives and, the main success, I guess you could say, of his knife business has really kind of come to be, I believe, in the last 5 or 10 years is when a lot of these production XM series knives have started coming out and hitting the market. And I think that's when the Hinderer name really became quite popular. Not that they weren't before, but I think they just hit a lot of other people's radars at that point in time. So it's a pretty cool story, Rick Hinderer, USA made company. I believe he intended, for these to be hard use working tools that you could use. There was really no intention for a Hinderer knife to be a safe queen or something that you highly coveted and didn't really use it for what it's intended for. The construction on this knife is pretty simple. You can take it apart yourself with, a flathead screwdriver and just some hex wrenches. Nothing fancy. It's really, pretty basic construction. So it's kind of funny, looking at the knife community and the amount of money that people pay for these knives, and most of them, I think, don't really get used, and that's not what they were meant to do. So anyways, let's talk about the knife a little bit. So this is a XM24 spanto, which I believe is the largest of the XM series. As you can see there, this is a big knife. I have to admit, taking this out of the box when I got it was pretty impressive. Kind of have, or I should say, you kind of have that feeling, when you open up a box and see a new knife for the first time, and kind of have an initial gut feeling. And definitely, my gut feeling with this knife was, wow, this is a pretty sweet knife. It just feels great in hand. It has a certain look to it, has a certain feel to it, and you knew that you had something kind of special, that you're dealing with here. So the blade on this knife is just about 4 inches in length, so it's a big blade. It has this nice stone washing on there. If I can show you guys, I have to say the stone washing on this blade is among the best I've seen in any production knife. This is of course S35 VN steel, which I think is a good all-around choice. It's adequately tough, holds a good edge, machines pretty well, and again, going back to these being kind of a harder use knife, you don't really want something that's maybe super hard and super fragile, because you're going to chip out your edge and not going to be happy. So this particular blade shape, which they call it the spanto, which is kind of a combination of a spear point and a tanto. I know, real original naming there, right? But see if I can pick it up on the camera here, guys. But there is a thick swedge that runs right here where my thumb is. That is quite a bit thicker. That runs all the way here from this flat portion of the blade to the edge. And that's why you see that kind of thickening there of the secondary bevel from where I sharpen this, because the blade thickens quite a bit towards the main belly right there, which you know, is very unique. I don't know of any other knives where I've seen that, and I kind of like the thinking behind that because, you know, it increases the blade thickness right where you do a lot of your main cutting. You know, when you're cutting things, this belly portion of the blade, you know, hits, you know, right there. So having some extra metal, you know, to kind of reinforce that and back that up is, you know, probably a good idea. So that's interesting. And then continuing on from this little swedge area towards the tip, the blade does thicken quite a bit there, so you have a little bit more added strength there as well. The tip there for pierce cutting and things like that. Excuse me, guys. But if you look at the secondary bevel on this knife, you can see that, you know, it's a bit thinner here at the base, but the blade is quite a bit thinner back here and thickens towards the tip. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. This knife was sharpened at 20 degrees per side, and that's a consistent bevel, you know, from base to tip. Previously, whoever had this knife did attempt to sharpen this knife one or more times, so as a professional sharpener, I have to kind of do my best to cover up the mistakes of others, you know, so I think I would have laid the edge back maybe around 21 if it was a brand new knife, but up here towards this belly, somebody, when they sharpened it, they kind of laid the knife back a little too far and the bevel got a bit wide, and if I didn't cover that up, it wouldn't look nice. It would have looked funky, so had to drop that back just a little bit to kind of cover that up to make this look nice. So overall, really nice blade. I think it came out well. It's a pretty thick blade. I would say the stock is approaching, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 3/8 maybe. It's a pretty big slab of steel there, guys. Again, there's Rick Hinderer's horse logo, which is a throwback to his farrier days, which I mentioned in the earlier part of this video, if any of you guys were wondering. Of course, this has the orange G10 handle scale here on the front side, and from what I understand, the aftermarket scales, or the market for aftermarket scales for these knives is quite extensive. You can pretty much get any color, material, texture you want for these knives, which is pretty cool. Of course, here on the back side you have a titanium frame lock, which is very beefy, very well done, also stone washed. You guys can see that there. As you can see here, it has this lock bar stabilizer, I believe they call it, so you don't overextend the lock bar and kind of mess up the spring tension here in this titanium lock here. I believe this has a aftermarket clip cover here, which is kind of cool, just a personal touch there, kind of a shield and cross, kind of like a, I don't know, Knights Templar kind of thing going on there. But simple pocket clip, you know, nice, functional, nothing really to report there. This knife has good jimping, you know, down here by the handle, up here by the lock, and also there's, you know, some up here for your thumb, which is, you know, medium sharp. To be honest, the G10 handle kind of bites in more than the actual metal does. Actually, hold on, let me feel that again. No, the metal, it's pretty good. Jimping's not bad. You know, it's not as sharp as like a Spyderco jimping, but if you put your thumb in there, I mean, it's not going to move. A little bit of jimping on the back here also. As you can see, it's a flow-through design with these 3 pillars. I did take this knife apart and clean it, and I have to say, you know, for being a $600 knife, I believe, these are quite easy to disassemble and maintain. Their construction is very simple. You know, you just basically remove this pivot here, but you have to hold this pivot screw, or the whole pivot will just spin, it won't come out. And once you get that off, you know, just pull out these 3 handle screws here, and this blade is retained by 2 nylon washers, and you just clean it up, put it back together, and that's about it. There's not too much else to this knife. So yeah, simple is good sometimes, right? So speaking about the action on this knife, I have to say this is probably one of the smoothest knives I've ever handled. You know, opening and closing this blade, it's just very smooth, extremely smooth, and you can hear that detent as it kind of locks in. But if I just kind of see if I can get an angle to show you guys this, just shake this back in, you know, that blade will just go back in by itself. Very smooth. I'm guessing that has something to do with the nylon washers that are in there. You know, really smooth action. Very pleased with that. The liner lock on this knife is frame lock, I'm sorry, on this knife is also very good. You know, it's not overly hard to disengage. It locks up securely. You know, there's no play in this blade at all in either direction. And I have to say that, you know, it's very smooth to disengage. There is absolutely no lock stick at all. You know, it just locks in there, and a little bit of pressure, and, you know, releases easily. You know, a lot of frame locks out there have stick to them, and you know, I'll talk about that in a minute, about some other brands that are kind of in the same category and price range as this particular knife. So yeah, really nice there. Trying to think of any points I didn't hit on. I think that covers about everything, guys. Let me do a little bit of a cut test here for you guys. Talk about this edge just a little bit. My paper fell on the floor here, so I need to retrieve that. But yeah, so this is about a 20 degree per side secondary bevel, guys. And my customer wanted a factory looking edge on this. He didn't want a polished edge, which I understand. You know, some people want to kind of maintain the factory look of the knife, and a full mirror polish definitely does not achieve that. So this is what I would call a, you know, kind of a factory look. The secondary bevel is finished at around 220 grit stone on the Edge Pro, and then I go ahead and strop that with about a 1 micron diamond paste on a strop, and that just brings up the shine a tiny bit, but gives you that, you know, kind of factory OEM, you know, look to the edge. It's a nice look, but not overly shiny, you know, which some people prefer on their knives. So, and honestly, I think that kind of goes with the style of this knife. You know, it's, again, these Hinderer knives are not designed to be, you know, just pretty knives that you look at. They're designed to be working tools that you use, and you know, there's plenty of other expensive knives out there that you can just look at and ogle, you know. So yeah. So yeah, it's about a 20 degree secondary bevel, and then I put just a little micro bevel on there. It's probably around 22, 23 degrees, which is a little bit steep, but it's kind of what the knife wanted. I didn't really want to reprofile the blade too much, you know, given that the owner may want to resell this knife at some point in time, or you know, things like that. So just do a little cut test. This blade is, like I said, it's pretty thin back here, but it's kind of thick towards the tip. Doesn't slice super great towards the tip, but I think he did pretty well, all things considered. So just do a couple cuts here for you guys. Show you the edge that we got. All right, there we go. Very sharp, as you can see there. Nice and sharp edge. Don't want to cut too much there. It's funny, you know, I see a lot of these sharpening videos for knives, and they say, oh, you know, I sharpened this knife for a customer. Then they go and they cut, you know, a half a book of phone book paper, and I'm just thinking, you know, the edge isn't going to be quite as sharp as when you know, they first sharpened it. So anyways, to wrap this video up, I know this is going long, but it's not every day I have a Hinderer knife in my hands here to look at and play with. So to conclude, there's a lot of controversy about Hinderer knives or higher end knives, and knife brands and knife companies, they're kind of a lot like your favorite sports team. Everybody has their favorites. Everybody thinks that they're the one they like is the best, and sometimes people have some kind of egos about the knives that they own, or things like that. So I don't know if that's just human nature. I kind of think it is. We kind of have that sort of mentality and thinking in a lot of areas of life, not just knives. So it's as humans, we kind of like to have our own neighborhood, our own tribe, our own family, whatever that we feel is best or whatever. So anyways, I digress. So of all the knives that I have personally handled, through my sharpening service, I would have to say that this knife probably is, well, not probably, is among the top of the knives, that I've personally handled. I'd probably go as far as saying the fit and finish on this knife is the best I've ever seen in a production knife. And that includes brands like Chris Reeve and Microtech, which are also, good brands. But I guess just to make a comparison, people I think sometimes compare Chris Reeve and Hinderer. And based on this example that I've seen with this knife, I would say that the fit and finish on this Hinderer knife exceeds that of a Chris Reeve knife. And some of you may disagree with me, but overall, just the machining, the finishes, the hardware that's used, the feel of the knife, the way this lock disengages. A lot of Chris Reeve knives, they have pretty bad lock stick on the lock bar for their frame lock. This knife is just smooth like butter. The action of the knife is much, much smoother than the Chris Reeve knives that I've handled. A lot of the Chris Reeve knives are, I don't know why, they're just not that smooth. But this knife, from open to close, is completely smooth, the same feeling, all the way, from open to close, which is something I can't say for a lot of the Chris Reeve knives that I've held, that they're smooth in parts, but they kind of have some areas where they hang up on, they kind of get stuck. So, that's something to think about. Like I said, the stonewash finish is very nice. They also use the S35 VN steel. I don't have a lot of experience or extended use testing with Hinderer's S35 VN, but from what I hear, they run this steel harder than Chris Reeve does, and I've heard reports that the edge retention on these Hinderer knives is much better than what you get on a Chris Reeve knife, because they run their steel pretty soft. So, price considered, so this is an expensive knife. I think it retailed for about $5.95 if you could get one, from Rick Hinderer. But this is the largest version. They do make a XM18, I believe, which I think is about a 3.5-inch blade. And I could be wrong, but I think those retail for around $3.95, maybe $400-ish. So, comparing that level of quality to something like a Sebenza 21 or a 25, for the money, if you're looking for, a titanium frame lock knife like this, I would probably go with the Hinderer, to be honest. That's just my opinion. Now, keep in mind, these are heavier duty knives. This is a heavy knife. This knife is almost a half a pound. It's just a tick under 8 ounces on my scale. So it's, it's not a light knife, but it doesn't feel overly heavy. But, kind of is what it is. But, alright, well, I'm going to wrap this up, guys. This is almost a 20-minute video, but very cool, very awesome. Rick Hinderer XM24 Spanto. Impressive knife, guys. Impressive knife. You get one of these in hand, and you kind of understand why people like these knives quite a bit. So, if your budget allows and you can afford one of these and you can find one, I highly recommend that you pick one up and check it out at least for a little while. So that's all for today, guys. Thank you for watching. Appreciate all my subscribers. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.